when we talk about timbre, we can also talk about the instrument families in the Western European art music tradition. Um, we tend to talk about instrument families in this tradition as strings, winds, percussions, and keyboard, with some other distinctions added. So we have woodwinds, which are a musical instrument where vibrations begin by blowing across either the top of the instrument or across a reed or between two reeds. And then the pitch changes by opening or closing holes in the instrument. Brass, then, um, are instruments that are generally made of brass, and the vibrations start by vibrating your lips when you blow into a mouthpiece. And you change the pitch by changing your lip vibrations and by opening and closing valves in the instrument. So these are both aerophones and these are both winds, but they are subcategories of those larger categories. Strings are the instrument has strings, and you bow or you pluck over a resonant chamber. These would all be, of course, chordophones, but they're a subset of the chordophone. Then a keyboard is basically any instrument that has a keyboard. Now, in contrast to in the previous video where we saw keyboards in various different categories there, in Western European art music categorization, if it has a keyboard, we call it a keyboard, regardless of what kind of membrane or string or whatever the keyboard is hitting. And then a harp is a harp. Harp gets its own category. And then percussion is anything that you hit in this. Again, percussion isn't going to map crisply onto the chordophone, aerophone, idiophone, membranophone thing, because some of percussion are idiophones and some of them are membranophones, and even some of them would be chordophones. So percussion, however, is a distinct category in Western European art music practice as anything that you hit. And when you go to see an orchestra, there's a pretty standard way that that these instrument families are disposed, where you've got your strings around the outside, and then your woodwinds in the middle closest to the conductor, and then the brass behind them, and then finally the percussion behind that. And that would look like this from above, where you've got your strings closest to the conductor, then your woodwinds, then your brass, and then your percussion in the back. We can also talk about voice types, or parts in a choir. And these would be the soprano, bass, tenor, and alto. This layout that I'm showing you here is not nearly as standard as the orchestra's layout. You go to almost any church or choir concert, you can have different dispositions of these voice parts. But the voice parts themselves are pretty standard. You see music being written in 4 parts quite a lot, where the soprano is the highest, the alto is the next highest, then the tenor is the second lowest, and the bass is the lowest. And you can write these in 4 separate lines, but you can also write them on the grand staff with the treble clef stems up, meaning soprano, the treble clef stems down, meaning alto, the bass clef stems up, meaning tenor, and the bass clef stems down, meaning bass.